start looking at, well, what's going on? Corporate earnings outlook. That's been the big driver of the narrative, which is the recession that we saw not in the overall economy, but in earnings. So we're talking about EPS, earnings per share. That maybe has bottomed at this point. I mean, we can look at it and say, well, definitely in the third quarter of last year, that was the bottom point for those earnings. They got a little better, though they were still negative in Q4, but less negative. And then this year, we've had a really solid start to the year. The earnings season that's just now about wrapping up has proven to be a pretty strong one. That's driving some of those expectations higher for what future earnings might look like, and even the estimates that we were expecting, which they were pretty positive. They were pretty rosy in terms of their outlook. They more or less have come to fruition, therefore justifying maybe some of the price expansion, the price to earnings expansion that we saw in 2023. So that's kind of the first starting point, and it's interesting that that's something I paid very, very close attention to. We'll talk about it in the macro briefing here in the next hour or so. But we also have a full report here. So if you click on this one, very similar to what we saw on the quarterly market update, this is going to take us to the full report. You can see it's 16 pages, and really it's just a deep dive into the different sectors and what's going on the longer term and the shorter term view, going back and looking at some of those performances, and then really breaking down, well, what's the driver here? Why is maybe this sector positioned better than a different one? And again, I'm not going to read through all of the stuff, but just to give you a little taste, right? Talking about what's going on with loosening lending standards and how that might be an effect on boosting earnings. So it's really in-depth information. Again, it's a lot of chart-heavy information. It's pretty quantitative in nature. She's the head of quantitative research here at Fidelity Investments. So it is a little bit analytical, but if you're really interested in understanding what's going on with the business cycle, it's going to be something that's pretty crucial to understand if that's the type of investment strategy that you're looking to hold. And then they even give you, and let me just highlight this, the strategist view, right? Talking about the overweight, neutral, underweight for the different sectors. Now, I always want to highlight, whenever you're looking at this is more so for the intermediate to longer term investor. A lot of these views are over the next 9 to 12 months. So if you're saying, oh, well, the consumer discretionary is overweight here, should I take everything and put it into a singular trade that has a very short-term view? That's absolutely not the way to be using this information. Always like to just qualify that, because I don't want anybody to walk away from here saying, oh, I saw these sectors with green squares next to them, let me get really, really overweight. That's not really the goal or what you're trying to accomplish if you're doing this type of strategy. So with that being said, let me just hit one other thing, because once you go through quarterly market update, quarterly sector update, maybe you're looking to reweight, maybe you're looking for some trades in a particular sector or industry, possibly. Well, how do you know what it is that you actually hold in your account? And that's where I want to go back to our analysis tab on our main page. So if you log into Fidelity, or if you just go to accounts and trade, and then you go down to portfolio, it's going to take you to the following page here. Depending on how wide you have your browser window open, you might see analysis just already there. If not, you'll have to click more. And then what we want to do here is go down to analysis. And what this will allow us to do is a couple of different things. So first and foremost, it's going to give us a breakdown of what's going on in terms of our broader asset allocation. So what is our weighting for stock, domestic, foreign stock, bonds, and then short term? And sometimes if you have, like options or foreign currency or foreign shares in there, sometimes the system will not identify that. And that's usually what we're seeing in the unknown category. But if you don't have anything like that, you just have regular equities, ETFs, mutual funds, and bonds, it's going to really fall into the first three categories. And then cash or money markets is effectively what we're calling short term here. So we can look at that overall kind of strategy that we're having in terms of, well, how do I want to be weighted? Do I want, 60-40 or something to that effect? Do I want to be more aggressive, less aggressive? And that's where we get that first idea But once we're there, we can also see, if we go over to stock analysis, well, what is our style? So what are we talking about when we're talking about style? Well, it's really two things. The first thing is going to be the market capitalization. Do we want to be allocated more towards the large caps, the mega caps? That's been something that's been performing well. We saw it there on the quarterly market update. Those large cap stocks, specifically the growth stocks, have been doing quite well year to date, even though they pared a little bit of those gains back here in the last couple of weeks on that relatively shallow pullback of about 6%. Are we looking for mid caps, small caps? And what you'll notice here is we have what we're allocated to on the left-hand side. So in this particular test account, and this is not any kind of recommendation of how it's a really small account that we just use for demonstration purposes, but you'll notice there's nothing in small caps, and it's kind of heavily concentrated in the growth mid caps and then the value large caps. Well, then what we'll do here is we'll give you what the total market looks like. So again, does it have to look like this? Well, not necessarily, especially if you think that there's opportunities in very specific places in the market, then more often than not, you probably don't want it to look exactly like this. But just so you have a benchmark to compare to, this is what the overall market's going to look like. And obviously, it's going to be very heavily concentrated in that large cap category. And then it's kind of split between the value and the blend and the growth, but a little bit more of a heavier concentration on the growth side. So once we have that, well, how do we know what individual stocks or what are mutual funds or ETFs, how do they actually fall into these categories? And what you'll notice is down here at the bottom, it'll break it down for us. We have the list of all of our specific positions, and then we can look at small versus medium versus large. And then within that, it breaks down, well, if we have small, which I'll skip because we don't actually have anything in there, let's go to medium. Well, what do we have in mid-cap stocks that are value, blend, and growth? And you'll notice, for example, if we look at something like Sirius, this is considered a mid-cap stock, but it's also going to be a value stock. So all of the investment that we have in that particular holding is in that bucket. But notice if you have something like a mutual fund or an ETF, well, that's going to have a bunch of different equities in there. Potentially, it's going to even have bonds in there as well. But if it's an equity-based mutual or ETF, then what it'll do is it'll show you, well, how does that break down into the various buckets? So that's kind of the first thing that you'd want to look at. Well, is my style aligned with what I think my outlook looks like? The second thing would be, well, what do I look like on a sector perspective? So it's going to be pretty similar here. The main difference is kind of we have these bar graphs, and you'll notice that the vast majority of this particular demo account is in the communication services, and you see that blue bar mostly filled up and followed by financials and so on and so forth. The comparison here is not off to the side. It's that little white bar. It's actually two black lines, and it kind of separates the blue space on the page from the rest of it. And that, if you hover over it, will tell you if we were looking at, again, the Dow Jones US Total Market Index, and not even the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, we're looking at the total US market. Well, what does that look like in terms of weight for communication services? Well, you can see the index is roughly 8%, and our difference there is 40%. So we're massively overweighted in that. And that's fine if that's where you think that potentially the best performance or the most intriguing prospects are. Note that that's a very, very high concentration. Probably if you looked at some of those white papers, that's not really the method that they would propose to you. But you'll see that difference there. And the most important thing here is, well, if you think that one of these sectors is positioned poorly and you're way overweighted, well, maybe that's something that you want to take a look at, right? And very similar to how we had on the last page, the breakdown of small, mid, large, and then blend, value, growth. It's going to do the same thing for us here in terms of sector. Bank of America, obviously, that's going to be a financial sector. But if it's maybe a little less clear which one that falls into, it'll identify it for you here on this page. And then as well, we have our mutual fund breakdown, and you can see the Contra Fund, for example, has dollars in a lot of the sectors, except for real estate, doesn't have anything in that particular one, but everything else it's represented in some capacity. So really what this page is valuable for is once you go and start doing that research using that market update, sector update, you have some views on how you want your portfolio to look. Well, then you come over to this page and you identify, well, how am I aligned now? And what kind of alterations, if any, do I need to make? All right. With that, Chase, I want to take a pause here just in case any questions came in that you want to address. If not, I will yield the mic to you if you had anything to add to this or if you want to take us to our next item.
Yeah, Matt, I'll take it over to the next item. So let's hop into some more stock research tools. If you go to fidelity.com and then you go to news and research, then stocks, as Matt was showing us a little bit earlier, this will land you to the main research page. Now, one of the things I find interesting here, Matt, I think a lot of clients are fascinated by is if we scroll down this page, there's a section of orders by Fidelity customers. So this is going to give us a sense of some of the aggregate number of orders being placed through Fidelity Brokerage Services. And obviously, on a day like today, there's a few symbols that we would expect to see on here. Huge changes in the amount of orders that we're seeing for a couple of different names. So kind of interesting. It's always an interesting place to take a look at to say, hey, what's happening in the market? Anything fascinating, areas of interest or maybe importance within a given sector, type of factor analysis, or maybe just even some of those different kind of stocks that people watch. So I always like to point out this order by Fidelity customers. There's a few other things in here as well, like the today's events going to be noteworthy to check on earnings, any downgrades, economic calendar. Matt, I know you pointed that out earlier too. But what I really want to do is launch from here one of my favorite tools, which is the stock screener. So a couple ways that you can get here, honestly. If you're on the stocks tab, you can go down here towards the bottom. It says launch stock screener, and you can click that. You can also click screener tools up here. And when you do that, you get a pop-up and you can do a stock screener. You can use our ETF screener. Both of these are very, very similar. And we have a few others that are less commonly utilized, but we still do offer them for free here at Fidelity Investments. As such, we'll go ahead and add a stock screener. This is going to open up a new tab here for us within a browser. One of the reasons I love this tool, Matt, is you can make it your own. I've talked to so many clients, right? Thousands over the years, and each one I speak to has a little bit of a different filter or screener that they use, which is just fascinating in terms of idea generation of what they're trying to accomplish and what they're able to accomplish. So let's start basic and we'll work our way forward from there. When you first load this page, you're going to get a few things that show. The first thing is going to be the landing for themes. So is there a thematic investment you're looking for? 5G future connectivity, are there ETFs or in this case stocks that are related to this idea? Clean energy, cybersecurity. That's been something that a lot of traders have talked about recently here. Fintech, whatever it might be. Robotics and AI, right? All these public companies, Matt, reporting earnings. What do? They mention the word AI just so they can get some kind of positive reaction. There's a lot of different themes that you can use as a start for the basis of your screen. Maybe you don't know the exact company, but hey, that person you talked to, your uncle, the dentist, whoever said, hey, I'm looking at companies in this kind of area. Maybe you want to look at that area, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, if you want to be more strategic, then we have this strategies category. You can go by the most popular strategies that are used by Fidelity clients here. There's a variety of these. I'm not going to click on any one single one just yet, but note that there is a most popular category. We can use a strategy for growth or value, technical, and income. Being here on the trading strategy desk, we often do coach clients on technical analysis. So this is the one I want to pick on for just today. But of course, note you can use any of these listed. So if we click on the technical, these are going to be pre-made strategies and screens to be used by a variety of companies. Now, in this case, we have mostly Recognia, which is a third-party technical analytics firm that Fidelity partners with and provides free research to our clients. So this one's made by Recognia, this one. However, this bullish chart patterns is powered by Zacks Investments Research. But we can click on any one of these. I'll pick on this one here, this Bull Ride Short Term, just to demonstrate how this tool works. So what it's going to do is as soon as we click on this, off to the left side, folks, we can see the search criteria that they have within this tool. So security price has to be above $4. Volume, 10-day average has to be within a certain limit. A percent of price change today, they want the highest 20%, volume, highest 20%, and it needs some kind of bullish candlestick or multi-bar technical event. That's the criteria set forth, pre-made for you, the trader. Now, what I love about this here, Matt, is it's not just some random strategy that we have to pray and hope over necessarily. It gives us a reason why it's been created. Like, what is the thought process that maybe we should be aware of as traders? So it gives us the objective to pinpoint very short-term trading plays based on blah, 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 blah. We can go through the whole thing. The strategy, there's a whole paragraph dedicated to why they have the filters that they do, the screens that they do within this overall tool. Most importantly, this section, things to watch out for, right? We recognize this isn't going to be a perfect screen. It's not going to be the holy grail to only profitable trades. There's going to be some kind of limitation or maybe a risk factor that you should be aware of as the trader. And the reason I like this tool is they're very upfront about what that may be from a realistic perspective. So you're not just going into this blind. It's not like you're paying some person $500 a month for some watch list. You have no idea what's the components of the watch list, why they're screening it. What are the things to watch out for? This is all going to be free. It's provided to you, and the logic and thesis behind it is also, quite clear. Now, that's going to be the pre-made stuff, right? So we talked about the thematic. We talked about some of the strategies. Let's talk real quickly here, Matt, about how we can customize this ourselves. Let's say for a moment, we want to start with a basis of a pre-made screen. Okay, awesome. Off on the left side, we can choose a la carte from any of these criteria. We have a most popular category with 15 different search criteria. If I minimize this, we can open up any others here. Basic company facts, if the company pays dividends, maybe that's important to you, maybe it's not. Technicals, you can add some additional technical criteria that may be important if you're a technical trader. Performance and volatility. So we're going to look at things like beta, standard deviation. Maybe you want to know how far away they are above or below their 52-week high or low. So a lot of things here. And then lastly, you can search. So let's say you want to add an additional volume criteria. If I search volume, let's say you want a 90-day average. It's going to show here. We left click once. And let's say we wanted to have very, very high volume based on a 90-day average, which is 1.46 million shares or more. We'll go ahead and check that box. Now, out of 5,184 stocks with a price between $4 and 600 grand, we've gotten all the way down to 5 results pretty quickly in this case too. So that's the power of this tool. We can go ahead and we can a la carte, we can choose any of this off to the side. However, we can clear all of this. Matt, there are some clients out there who I know, we've spoken to them, who don't really want to use a pre-made theme or a strategy. They just really want to start off with what they know, what they feel comfortable with. So you can do this right from the get-go. No pre-made tools to just start by yourself. You can custom make it from scratch. So in the Q&A, folks, if you wouldn't mind, just provide me a couple of examples of what would be important to you from this most popular list. We'll pick on this for now for brevity's sake, but most popular security price, market cap, security type. Like, what would you care about if you were a trader creating a screen? Put it in the Q&A. We'll put some of that together real quickly and see what we get for a screen. I'll start us off while people respond here, Matt. Security price. What if you don't want to trade a penny stock or a very low price security? Well, we can ignore these out of the almost 10,000 stocks available to start here. We could just ignore these and say, hey, you know what, maybe I want to avoid some of these low price securities. So I'm going to stick with maybe this medium, high, and very high to start. Okay, we've got 4,400 securities there. Maybe not quite where we want to be. Joyce says common stock with a volume greater than 2 million. So we'll go to security type. If we click on this, there's REITs, ADRs, a few other choices here, but common stock is what she had mentioned. So we'll click common stock. Mentioning volume as well. So we'll go to volume. Now in the most popular section, it's a 90-day average. And we can actually click very high, or we could change it custom in here as well. So we could do 2 million and above, right? Per Joyce's filter there. Let's take a look. We've got a few others. Okay, let me go through. We'll minimize this for just a moment. So we had a PE earnings as well that came through from Paul. So we could click on this and say price to earnings 12 trailing months. Maybe you want that very high, for example, to say, hey, I want a high PE ratio for whatever reason. Maybe that's indicative of some kind of growth company. Perfect. We'll go ahead and click very high on that, minimize it. What else do we got? Momentum and volume growth. So a few other things that we could take a look at when we look at price performance, the kind of security it is. But notice just right off the rip, just a couple of random things. We went down from 9,500 to 102 stocks. Of course, we could keep going all day long if we wanted to. Market capitalization, I saw that in here from VJ as well. If we do a mega cap, again, just to be exclusionary here, which is the point of the screen, now we're down to 8 stocks that have security price of $7 and change and above, common stock, a bunch of volume, a PE ratio that's relatively high, and a market cap that's a mega cap. These are the companies. So just a quick way to demonstrate it, folks. Again, do whatever you want with the screen. I know I'm being long-winded, but the point is you can do so much with this stock screener. A lot of these concepts, Matt, as you know, apply to our ETF screener as well. So if you're more prone to trading or investing in ETFs, you still have a very, very similar capability set. Now, the very last thing I want to mention about this screen, let's say you do all the due diligence, all the hard work, you spend hours and hours on your weekend building a screen that you think is going to be appropriate for your trading style. Folks, please make sure you save the screen. I don't want all that time to go to waste. So click Save to My Screens. Today, we can call this test 5-13 for today. We'll hit save. It's going to give you a confirmation it has saved. So from here, let's assume we just left this page, we came back. We can go up to the My Screens bookmark, click on this, and notice there's the 513. There's a few others that our team uses for demonstrative purposes as well. Let's say we want to check on companies reporting earnings for the Dow or the NASDAQ. Looks like Home Depot is the only respondent. Okay, so we have that here. Let's go back to My Screens, test 513. And wouldn't you know it, we're right back to that screen as it was. So pretty impactful tool, Matt. I think it's really powerful. It gives a lot of that control to the trader to decide what they're looking at here. Other than that, unless you have some other comments, Matt, on the screener, what I didn't spend a lot of time is these different tabs. Again, they're kind of self-explanatory in what you're going to find here. So basic facts, performance volatility. Just note once you're finished your screen, you might want to click through this additional information since it's quite easily at your fingertips to be viewed. Matt, anything you want to add when it comes to the stock screener and why or how maybe you've seen traders use this in the past?
Yeah, so let me address a couple of the questions that came through here, because we're getting a lot of questions about some specific stuff related to fundamentals and technicals. And I just want to highlight what we have for that. So even though it says earnings over here on the left-hand side, this is probably not what you're looking for in terms of if you're looking for growth in EPS or revenue growth. You'll notice you actually want to come down here to company growth, and that's where it's going to have EPS. So there's a couple of different ways that you can sort it out. Are you looking for forward long-term growth, 3 to 5 years, projected next year versus this year versus last year, this last quarter versus the same quarter the year prior? So that's one of the trickier parts about fundamental analysis is everybody wants earnings growth and revenue growth and things of that nature, but what are we actually comparing, right? What are the specific timeframes that we want to look at? And you can see that there's a number of ways that people actually will go through and do that. And that's just for EPS. Can do the same thing down here for earnings growth, right? We're looking at the last 12 months versus the 12 months before that, last quarter versus the same quarter last year, the 3 and the 5 year revenue growth. So there's a number of different ways that you can go through and sort that out. The other one that I wanted to spend some time on, because this is one of my favorites, we've talked about the fundamental stuff from time to time in a lot of our sessions, but really most of us are more focused on the technical analysis side of the equation. And this is where we can do the technical analysis related items. So maybe you're looking for things that are in a uptrend, for example. So one of the ways that I like to do this is say, okay, we're looking for maybe something that's a long-term uptrend. So how would we define that in one way? It's not guaranteed that this is the best way, of course, to do it, but a lot of people look at the price in relationship to that 200-day moving average and say, okay, well, I want something that's above the 200-day to kind of signify that maybe we're in a longer term positive trend. Preferably, we probably want that 200-day moving average to be slanted upward as well. So I just put a 0 and then leave it uncapped on the top. And then what if we wanted to do that and say, okay, well, yes, I want that, but maybe I'm looking for things that have potentially recently had a dip. Well, one way we could do it, we could use the 10 or the 20 or the 50. Let's just say we wanted the 50 and we wanted something that's in pretty close proximity to it. And notice I don't have any of the other stuff that Chase had on the screen. So we still have a lot of results left. But let's just say I wanted to go within 2% either direction of the 50-day moving average. And you'll see that took us down from about 3,500 results to 650. And then, maybe we use some of those other criteria, like, a volume requirement, or maybe there's a market capitalization that we're specifically looking to trade. I'm just curious what happens if we go in here. Yeah, we just went mega and large cap alone. You'll see that'll take us down to a more manageable list, but this is still probably a lot of work. So again, kind of part of this is going in there and finding, well, what are the things that are important to me? And then what's the number of securities I think I can manage? Of course, what you always want to do, because when you have these criteria, the next step always for me is going to be, I want to go look at the chart. And is what I'm expecting based on what I've input for my result criteria actually matching up with what I'm seeing on the chart? That's the obvious next step. But let me go back to the technicals here for a minute, because we have some other things that you can click on. So maybe we're looking for patterns or candlesticks. I think I saw one in there for RSI related things. So how do we go in there and spot RSI? Well, we'll notice if you click on bullish, we have a number of different things that we could go in there and utilize. So, maybe we're looking for a bullish double moving average crossover, something to that effect. So that's mainly what those are going to focus on, are these crossovers, either from beneath to above or above to beneath. But we also have some other things that we can click on as well. So we have something like the oscillator technical events, and RSI is definitely going to fit within that category of the oscillator. So you'll see we have a couple different things. So we have the Bollinger Bands, and we have MACD, momentum, relative strength is the one that we're actually looking for if we're looking for RSI. So you'll notice, based on what I have here up at the top, so market cap, large and above its 200-day, but pretty close, within 2% on either side of the 50-day moving average. Well, now we're looking for relative strength. Well, now we only have actually two things that pop up on this entire list. And if you go over and look at the results and you click on the actual event, it'll tell you when it occurred, right? So this one actually occurred all the way back on May 3rd. If you were looking for something that happened maybe a little bit more recently than that, well, what's the other thing that we can do? Well, we can sort it within the last day, the 7 days. The problem is if we went to 7 days, we're not going to actually get anything here. So maybe in that event, I'm going to get rid of this indicator-based one. Are we going to get anything? No. Well, maybe I have to get rid of my market capitalization requirement. See if we'll get anything here. We're still not getting anything. So if we go, too quickly or too recently, sometimes we don't actually get any results, and maybe we would have to change this part of the filter. But maybe you don't want to do anything, right? Maybe you just say, okay, well, there's nothing out there within the last 7 days that I'm looking for in terms of something that I'm willing to trade. So that's how you use all the different screeners for the technical based events. Now, Joyce, I saw your question about ATR, specifically ATRP, and there's nothing in here that's going to give us ATRP. Now, there is another way of doing it, because really ATRP, for anybody that's not familiar with it, that's the average true range percent. And what that's giving you is just a look at actualized volatility. Well, we can certainly go in there and use our option screener for actualized volatility and see, well, what's on the very high end, what's currently expected to have higher volatility. And the way that you'd actually have to do that, you have to go to news and research and then down to options. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because this is a kind of a different class where we talk about options trading ideas, but let me show you this just for the question that you asked, which is about, well, how do we search for things based on volatility? Well, we can go in here to our trading ideas, and then what we can do is actually go in there and create a brand new one. And ATRP is a reflection of volatility. And you'll see you have all these HVs, right? So HV 10, 20, 30, so on and so forth. So what if we're just looking for things that are on the higher end of their actualized volatility? So I'll go in there, put a minimum value. So what this is going to do is it's going to rank everything from 0 to 100. And if I'm looking for HV30, what that's telling me is the last actual 30 trading days, what is on the higher end of its 52-week range. So let me preview that scan. And it'll give you this list down here. And again, this is a pretty long list. You can see we're just in the A's, and all of this is in the higher than 50. So maybe we're looking for something even greater than that. Why don't we go and do 80? And even this is going to give us some pretty high actualized volatility, but you can see we actually made it down to the C's here. And again, we can do a lot of those same things that we did on the last screener tool, which is, well, maybe we're looking for something that has, a certain price range, right? So if we go in there, maybe we want only stocks that are between 10 and $50 for whatever reason. Maybe we're going in there and we're looking at something based on the fundamentals. So maybe we're looking at market capitalization. Maybe we won't only want to be using things that are 3 billion or up. The main difference here is we don't quite have that same press or functionality in terms of pressing the different categories. You'd actually have to type 3 billion in. And once we do that, you'll see our list is going to start getting more manageable. And well, now we make it all the way down to Z. So this is something that would meet all three criteria that we set. So this is just another form of the screener tool. So I wanted to hit that briefly here. The next kind of obvious thing, right? Let me go back to our stock research page. And let me use one of the symbols that came through. First one I saw was from Tesla, because I want to use an individual stock. And then we'll go over and talk about probably ETFs here after this. So once we maybe identify something on one of our screener tools, or maybe we just had something in mind that fits a certain sector or industry that we did on our initial research, what's kind of the next step here? Well, I think the chart is usually my first go-to, but maybe you're not as interested in that. You want to know what's going on with what's happening with some more of the fundamental based things. Well, that's where we can get this information, right? So it'll give us a picture of our earnings. So if we go over to the dividends and earnings, Tesla doesn't actually pay one, so it won't have anything there, but we have our earnings detail. And what this will do for us is it'll kind of give us this interactive chart that we can go through and kind of see, well, what were the estimates? What did we hit? And then it'll give us the green line, which is just simply the price of the stock. And then the other thing that I actually kind of like about this one more so than anything else is just going through and looking at the actual table of results here. So you can see what the estimates were versus the actual, right? And what the actual differences ended up being. So here's the estimate right here. Here's adjusted actual. You can see the most recent report date here. Tesla had a little bit of a stumble. Now, ironically, the stock actually popped after this earnings announcement stumble. And you can see the actual was 45. We were expecting 51. That was a consensus estimate, well within the the low and high range here. But it'll give you an actual kind of version of, well, what's been going on specifically with EPS for this company. And you can even compare it yourself. Well, what did they do in this quarter versus the same quarter in 2023? You can see there's a pretty nasty correction there, right? A pretty nasty contraction, but maybe some of that was already priced in, which is why I think it's important to look at both the chart and what's going on with the fundamental picture. We can also get the sentiment. So this is just going to be basically aggregated as put together. So this one, for example, is put together by S&P Global Market Intelligence, and they're just giving you what the different categories of valuation, quality, growth, stability, and financial health are. And it'll tell you, well, is it on the I shouldn't say the bad side, but on the more negative side, or is it more on the positive side from a fundamental perspective? It gives the same thing. This is provided by Trading Central on the technical side. So short term, strong, but you can see the mid and the weak still, mid and the long term still very weak. ESG related stuff and social sentiment is down there as well if you're interested in that type of data. But I think the other thing that's really helpful here is the analyst ratings. And to be completely honest with you, this is not a number that I put a whole lot of stock in by itself, right? You have to understand the methodology that's basically being portrayed here, and you have to also understand how positioning and price action already occurring maybe because of this can weigh in or seep into a stock's value. But basically what they're trying to do here is they're taking this list of different analysts and they rate them based on their prior success within the industry and the sector. And they're going to give the highest weight to the analysts that do the best historically in this given industry or sector. And once they do that, they kind of, for the 1,500 largest companies, they force fit them into this, 0 to 1 scale or 0.1 to 9.9 scale. And just because you're seeing something that's very bearish here, you have to remember, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of that price action has already occurred, because a lot of this is going to be based on the fundamental picture. And the market really isn't telling us about what has happened more so than what it expects to happen going forward. But what I really like about this, and one of my favorite, is the Refinitiv and the Verus report here. So if you click on these opinion dates, for example, this one, it'll take you to the following page and you can get a breakdown of what's going on. It'll give you some of the PE related stuff, what's its market cap, what really the true value that I find in this, because a lot of this stuff you can see in other places. It just aggregates some of this information, but it's, for one, the price target of analysts. We get asked this question all the time. Well, where are the price targets? Well, this is an example of one where they're going in there, they're looking at a bunch of different analysts. They're showing what the high and the low is. So, I mean, somebody has, it looks like $22 on there, which is pretty drastic. And then you have the high end of 320, and then you have the mean, which is going to be 180 for this particular one. But then it also shows you the earnings per share picture. So it kind of shows you the lead in here, and it's been struggling a little bit and really had a rough quarter this most recent go around, but expected to maybe make a recovery in the next quarter of next year. And then it shows you the same thing just on an annual basis, as well as giving you what some of the estimates are for the EPS. And then it's going to do the same thing for the revenues, right? Because EPS is one of those things that's the bottom line number. Things like, expenses and, marketing and, one-off situations can affect this number. Share buybacks is another big one. But revenues is one of those things where, yes, it's something that, maybe can be pushed at certain times, but seeing a consistent rise in revenue and that growth in revenue has been a story for a lot of these companies going back to last year. And you can kind of see the picture here where, increased in 2023, but now we're seeing a slowing of it. It's still expected to potentially be up in 2024, 98 billion, but we did 96.8. I know that's probably really hard for a lot of you to see, but that would be the mean estimate. So just slightly above. Is that going to come in higher or lower? What ends up happening there with the revenues is probably going to be a big driver of, what the narrative and what the picture of the stock looks like on a go forward basis. So you can get a lot of the specific information as well as the fundamental metrics. So gross margin, revenue growth, return on equity, net margin, things of that nature. It'll show you what the stock is doing and then compare it to the industry average. And you can see these are still all pretty good for Tesla on the fundamental basis, but is it going to continue to be the case, and are they going to be able to continue to grow? That's kind of the narrative behind this particular one at this moment in time. And then final thing I'll hit here, Chase. Well, actually, let me hit two different things. So we have the comparison. So it's going to give you a list of different companies, right, that maybe it's competing with. And then it also down here will show you, well, what are some of the investments that you can get on an ETF level that get you exposure to Tesla, and it'll break down how much individual exposure you have in this particular ETF to the stock that you're looking at. And you can actually come down here if you have a list of companies you want to compare, and let's say you wanted to compare the the growth of Tesla to we'll say Ford and Race and GM, right? You can put all these different stocks in here, and it'll give you the EPS growth. Come down here, the revenue growth and free cash flow, all of these different things. You can kind of do that, what we would call bottom-up analysis, which is, hey, I know what industry or sector I want to be in, but now I'm looking for the right investment or right trade within that on a fundamental picture. You can use this compare tool to potentially make that happen. So that is one of the other things that I like to look at. Here, if you're just looking for the actual financial statements, personally, I always like to just go to the investor relations page for the individual companies. Obviously, that's not, it's obviously not prepared by Fidelity and its third party, but it is coming from the actual company itself. And I would imagine that's where S&P Capital is pulling all of this data and information from. But if you just want to see it on our page, you don't want to have to go over there. You can click on more. It'll give you a breakdown of those financial statements. But then saw a question about ownership and insiders. So where can we track that information? That's right here on the statistics page. And then you click that more button. So first of all, this will tell you, well, who's actually the primary owners of the company. So you see institutional ownership, mutual fund ownership, institutional mutual fund ownership, mutual fund ownership from the retail side, and then insider, and then the other, right? And then it'll go in there and give a breakdown of what's going on the institutional level, as well as, well, who are the top 10 institutionals that hold it. And you can see we're actually on this list. That's us. For anybody that's not familiar, FMR is Fidelity. That's how most of these companies show up if we're heavily into it. But you can see the other companies as well that have a pretty big stake. But then the other thing that you can do here is you can look at insider transactions. So if you don't know what all of this stuff means, you can click on this. It'll give you a description of what some of these different squares mean. And in addition to that, well, you can see, well, what's been going on recently and who's been doing it, right? So you can do this on the SEC EDGAR website as well. We just try to aggregate it a little bit better, but you can see what the actual transaction was. So was it a sell? Was it automatic? Was it discretionary? Was it some kind of stock option plan? And it'll profile that for you right here, as well as the amount of shares, and then the market value and what kind of holding was being held by that particular person, whether it's a board member, or maybe it's somebody that's within the company and some kind of executive. But then you can also see it in terms of the insider trends. So you can see the buys and the sells, and this will kind of just aggregate it for you. So you can see decent amount of selling here occurred in the late part of 2021 and then the early part of 2022. Not overly shocking. This isn't the only company that was doing that at that time, as inflation really started to take grip and take hold. Meta and Mark Zuckerberg had a very famous one that looked very similar to this, spending a lot of money on the metaverse, but also selling stock, going into what many were expecting to be kind of a late cyclical downturn. And that's almost to a T exactly what ended up being happening. And you can see there hasn't been a whole lot of aggregated activity here in the last year or so, just a little bit there right at the end of 2023, and we really haven't seen a ton of this left. So all pretty interesting, and I think this is one of the better ways if you want to go in there and look at what's going on with the insiders. This is how you view it. Chase, I know we're running a little short on time here. Anything else that you wanted to hit? I mean, there's a ton more stuff, of course, but just trying to get some of the highlights. I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, hey, man, I'm pulling something up right now. It's taking my computer a moment to load. Do you mind just showing us through or walking us through Chart Plus real quickly? I think
Sure.
we talk about stock research, and that tends to be from more of like the fundamental perspective. But I mean, Fidelity spent a lot of time and effort to update this Chart Plus feature, so we should probably cover it real quickly if you don't mind. Maybe like the
Sure.
Anchor VWAP, something like that as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be very similar to what we have in Active Trader Pro, and kind of what we had is just more robust, is the way that I would say it. It's a little bit more modern in terms of how it looks and how it actually appears. But of course, we can alter our time frames down here on the bottom. In addition to that, we can go in there, if we're looking for something like the technical analysis, right? So this is provided by Trading Central. So this is a third party, but they go in there and they'll slap on their levels for the chart. They'll talk about RSI, what's going on with MACD, and then the levels potentially that they're trying to identify. So, for example, above 189, look for 209.20, 221.30, and then they give even a somewhat of a leaning. So, as long as 189 is resistance, look for 132.7. Right, where are we at right now? We're much higher than that. So that's a pretty interesting take on this particular stock. So it kind of gives you that breakdown, and you can see Trading Central's point of view on this. We can do all of our drawing stuff here. Let me get rid of this for just a second. Let's hide that. We wanted to do this ourselves, and we said, well, you know what? I want to just go in there, and I'd like to draw my own indicators. We can do that. Maybe I'll refresh this here, or why don't I just use a different stock? Hopefully it'll take me to the next page. So the draw tools, let me zoom out on this a little bit here. So we'll go to our 5-year. So we have all these different things that we can do with our drawing. So fib projections, for example, if we wanted to measure something like that, and it'll give us our projections to the bottom side. Pretty interesting. Takes us right down to the 127. Ends up being the gap down level on this particular one, just measuring this move to this move. Number of different things here. So all sorts of different ways that you can manually go in there if you're trying to draw chart patterns or trend lines or resistance, support, whatever it may be. Our displays, if you like the regular OHLC, that's on there. Candles, you can change all of that style. We have a little bit more robust stuff down here, right? I don't personally use a whole lot of this, but some people really like this one, for example, right? It's just a slightly different way of looking or presenting the same information with data, volume, price, high, low, things of that nature. But then we also have indicators. If you just have what you're looking for in mind, you can always search for it. So Chase was talking about anchored VWAP here, and it shows up automatically there. But if you just start typing it in, it'll simplify this list. What if we were looking for volume based stuff? Well, let me add a U in there. Oops. So we have all of these volume related indicators. You can also just go and click on the category of indicator that you're potentially looking for, add it to the chart. And then the other thing that you can do here, of course, is you can go in there and add things like splits and earnings dates and dividends if those are coming up, or if you want some of that same idea of support resistance, but you don't want everything that's on that chart, well, you can add support and resistance here, stops, your classic patterns, things of that nature. And you see when you do that, it's going up here and giving us the resistance. Let me do this. Let me back this out to 10 potentially. There we go. So it gives us our resistance line, 509.58, gives us our support. And of course, this is based on the longer term 250-day. If we want something in the last 20, we can change that, and it'll snap it to this kind of trading range that we've been in the last couple of days. You can see the top didn't change, but the bottom is much more relevant than the one that we had. And then once you're done here, you can, of course, save these charts so that you have kind of the same stuff coming up each time that you pull the specific symbol. The other thing I wanted to mention, because we saw a bunch of questions, and I really meant to spend a little bit more time on this, so I apologize. But news and research, if we go to ETFs, just like we screened for individual stocks, we can screen for ETFs as well. Let me just show one or two highlights from this, because we had some questions on it. And Chase, I'll turn it back over to you to show what you were pulling up there. But we can use the same screener tool that we did for stocks. This one's just more specifically for ETFs. We can go in here and screen for just ones that are Fidelity or iShares, which is curated by BlackRock. We're looking for sector ETFs or fixed income market cap. we have all sorts of different ways to sort for that. In addition to that, though, one of my favorite things here is, well, what if we have a list of companies, but we're not really looking to be too concentrated in one particular one, but we want exposure to it. What if we just had an idea of, well, maybe I want, and I'm just going to use financials because I'm thinking about their symbols for some reason off the top of my head. But just as an example, what if we were looking for something that had Bank of America and Goldman and JPN in it? And let's click view matching ETFs. Well, it's going to give us a list of those potential ETFs, and then it'll tell us the exposure that each one has to the different companies that we're looking for. So, for example, if we did this one right over here, well, about 25% of that ETF is just these three companies. But what does that mean? Well, 75% is something else. And then if you're interested in that, you can always click on this and get a further description, just like we had a research page for individual stocks. We also have it for the ETF. One of the main differences here is it's going to have a composition page. And why does it have that? Well, it has that because we want to know what's in it. So this one only has 26 positions in it, and it gives us a breakdown. You can view all the holdings by weight. You can see this one's really dedicated 100% to large and value stocks. And then it breaks down, well, 68% banks, 27 capital markets, 4% consumer finance. So you can go through and do that. You can look at distributions and expenses. That's going to matter on an ETF versus a stock because they have this thing over here, which is a cost of actually being in the product that's administered by whoever's creating it. Then you have the ratings and then performance, and then you can do some of the similar comparisons as well. So I'll leave it at that as far as the ETFs go. Chase, I know you said you had something that you were working on getting pulled up, so I'll turn it back over to you for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we're just a few minutes over normal ending time. So I want to wrap up with what I was trying to pull up a little bit earlier on, which was some next steps and some resources for everybody at home. I know we got the question a little bit earlier on about, is this session going to be recorded? It absolutely is recorded, but for compliance purposes, this unique and individual live session won't be posted to the website, but we do have some that are, I would say, similar in nature that are recorded. So let's kind of talk through how we access those right now. All right, Matt. So what we want to do is up in the top right-hand corner, no matter where we are in Fidelity Investments, we should have a search box, and we'll type in the word trading basics, what to know. I know it sounds very, very specific, but sometimes we have to be on the website. I'm going to zoom in for everyone at home. Again, trading basics, what to know. Go ahead and search that in here, folks, and you'll get a list of results. The second from the top is going to be trading basics, what to know before getting started. This is what I would encourage everybody to take a look at. It's going to be relatively similar to what we talked about here today, in that it's our 4-week kind of beginner investor / trader class that we put on all the time. It's recorded in this second session here. Trading basics research and analysis is going to cover a little bit of the details that we, Matt and myself, talked about here today. In addition, if you're just a brand new trader, I saw a few people in here today, Ramji as well, making a comment that brand new to some of the trading process as well. If you just happen to be newer to trading in general, this might be a great piece of content or pieces of content for you to study on your own time to prepare for the next live session that you decide to attend. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at this. Again, search Trading Basics, what to know. Find that second link. You've got 4 different sessions you can watch. And at the bottom, we have the material PDF slides that you can download, as well as any transcripts if you need them. So again, just a great free resource. A lot of that kind of posted on the website if you know where to search for it. In addition to that, Matt, as I wrap us up here, if you're looking for more than just that, which is totally reasonable in my opinion, if you go to, let me just zoom back out here to normal view, news and research, and at the very bottom of this drop-down menu, it's going to say learn. So in our learning center, all kinds of recorded content and also articles as well. If you go off to the left side, in this case, you can click on events, choose either our coaching sessions, which are, again, one-off sessions like today. You can go to our classes to see our 4-week curriculum in structured classes that we put on. But then again, we have this section on demand webinars. So again, any recorded content that we do currently have on the website will live in this area. I will just note that we had a lot of content here. It recently got pulled just because we're always revamping what's on the website. And, every so often, if there's a presentation from 2 years ago, we'll pull it, we'll record a new one, and we'll put it on. So some of the stuff maybe that you had seen in the past, if you go to review it, might not be here, but there's still a lot of information that's obviously vetted and reputable here from us at Fidelity. Okay, Matt, last thing I have, and we'll actually close down this session here, is 2 screenshots for everyone to either just note, take a picture of, whatever it might be, and we'll pull them up on the screen share here right now. So the first one on the left side is going to be the earnings calendar. This is from a third-party Earnings Whispers. This is the most anticipated earnings releases for this week of May 13th. So I always like to bring this up. I was just in a session prior, Matt, talking about gaps in charts. And one of the main causes of those is going to be fundamental news catalysts like earnings. So if you're an investor or a trader, we want you to manage your risk responsibly. So be aware of some of these companies for this upcoming week that have earnings that certainly may impact you, your account, maybe even the markets more broadly speaking. On the right side is the calendar for our upcoming sessions this week. One of our teammates, Andrew, puts this together just to make it a little bit easier to see all of our sessions in one place. So Matt and myself are wrapping up today's session here that was supposed to end about 1 for stock research. If you want a midday briefing about what's going on in the macro markets today, just take a look at the stock market at 1:30. We've got that going on. If you want to learn more about technical analysis and some of those basics, we've got it. And as always, we've got a wrap-up session here at 4 p.m. after the bell tonight. And of course, the rest of the week ahead. So take a screenshot of this, take a picture of it if you'd like to. Keep it for your files on your phone for the week ahead to schedule a session. And Jenny asking here, where can I find this chart in the left? Jenny, this is a third-party tool that we have external from Fidelity. It's called Earnings Whispers. So if you just Google search or use your favorite search browser, Earnings Whispers, they have something called an earnings calendar. Should be free for you to access. I've never had to pay a penny for any of that kind of information, but yeah, you can go ahead and check that out. Just give it a Google search. We pulled into the sessions just to save you that step, make it a little bit more easy for you. But yeah, folks, everyone, thank you for attending. Really good participation. It's a great audience here today. We hope to see you in another session soon. Matt, as always, great to present with you. Thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.